The sound of a pistol shot echoed through the dusty main street of Redemption Springs, Colorado, in the summer of 1879, but Willow Nelson barely flinched. She was used to the sound of gunfire in this rough-edged frontier town, where every day was a struggle to survive. At 22, her once bright eyes had hardened, her delicate features weathered by the harsh western sun and even harsher circumstances. Today, those eyes were fixed on the general store ahead as she clutched her swollen belly, 6 months pregnant and completely alone. "There she goes again," a woman's voice hissed as Willow passed. "The schoolteacher with no husband and a bastard child. Shameless," another whispered loudly enough for Willow to hear. "Claims some traveling man promised to return for her. We all know that story." Willow kept her chin high as she entered Hargrove's general store. The bell above the door announced her arrival, and conversations immediately hushed. Mrs. Hargrove's pinched face appeared from behind a shelf of canned goods, her disapproval as palpable as the summer heat. "Miss Nelson," she said, emphasizing Miss with barely disguised contempt. "What can I get for you today?" "Just some flour and sugar, please," Willow replied, placing her meager coins on the counter. "And perhaps some coffee, if I have enough." Mrs. Hargrove counted the coins with theatrical slowness. "This will cover the flour and sugar, but nothing more. Times are hard for everyone, especially those with additional responsibilities." Her gaze flicked to Willow's stomach. As Mrs. Hargrove measured the flour, the store's door swung open. A man Willow had never seen before stepped inside, ducking his tall frame beneath the doorway. Dust clung to his worn leather chaps and denim shirt, and the spurs on his boots jingled softly as he moved. His face was partially hidden beneath the brim of a weather-beaten hat, but Willow caught a glimpse of striking blue eyes and a strong jaw shadowed by several days' growth of beard. "Afternoon," he said, his voice deep and graveled, like someone who didn't use it often. "Mr. Oakley." Mrs. Hargrove's demeanor transformed instantly into cloying sweetness. "Welcome to Redemption Springs. Sheriff mentioned you might be staying a while." "That's right. Owen Yates, madam, not Oakley." He corrected her gently, removing his hat to reveal tousled dark hair. "Looking to settle here if things work out." Willow gathered her purchases, eager to escape before becoming the subject of another round of whispers. As she turned to leave, she bumped into a stack of canned goods, sending them clattering to the floor. "I'm sorry," she murmured, struggling to bend down with her protruding belly. "Let me help you with that," Owen said, quickly kneeling to gather the fallen cans. Their hands brushed as he handed her the last can, and Willow felt an unexpected jolt. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither moved. "Thank you," she said finally, breaking the silence. "My pleasure, Mississippi." "Nelson." "Willow Nelson." "The schoolteacher," Mrs. Hargrove interjected, her voice sharp. "Though I imagine she won't be teaching much longer in her condition." Owen's eyes flickered briefly to Willow's stomach, but his expression remained neutral. "A noble profession, teaching. This town's fortunate to have you." The simple kindness in his words nearly undid her. It had been so long since anyone in Redemption Springs had spoken to her with anything but scorn. Willow nodded, unable to trust her voice, and hurried out of the store. Later that evening, as Willow prepared a simple supper in the small cabin attached to the schoolhouse, a knock at the door startled her. Visitors were rare these days. Cautiously, she opened the door to find Owen Yates standing on her porch, hat in hand. "Mr. Yates," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "Is there something I can help you with?" "I apologize for the intrusion, Miss Nelson. I wanted to return this." He held out a small leather-bound book. "You dropped it at the store earlier." Willow took the book, a collection of poetry she carried everywhere. "Thank you. I would have missed it terribly." "Tennyson," he noted, gesturing to the book. "Good choice for difficult times." Willow studied him more closely now. His clothes were dusty but well made, his manner educated despite his rugged appearance. "Would you care for some coffee, Mr. Yates? It's the least I can offer for your trouble." Owen hesitated, glancing at the darkening sky. "I wouldn't want to impose." "You wouldn't be," Willow assured him, stepping back to allow him entry. "Conversation is a rare commodity for me these days." Inside, Owen removed his hat and sat at her small table while Willow poured coffee into chipped porcelain cups. The lamplight softened his features, revealing a scar that ran along his left temple. How long have you been teaching here? He asked. Nearly 2 years now. I came west from Boston after my parents died. Teaching positions for women are more plentiful out here. And the children? Do they treat you well? A sad smile crossed Willow's face. They did. Most have been kept away since. She gestured vaguely to her stomach. That seems unfair to both you and the children. Life is rarely fair, Mr. Yates, particularly for women in my position. She sipped her coffee, changing the subject. What brings you to Redemption Springs? I've been wandering for years, Owen replied, his gaze distant. Fought in the war, then tried my hand at cattle driving, gold prospecting, even bounty hunting for a time. None of it stuck. Sheriff Colton mentioned they need a deputy here, and I'm tired of drifting. So you're to be our new lawman? If the town council approves me tomorrow. Owen studied her for a moment. Sheriff mentioned there's been trouble at the school lately. Boys throwing rocks, parents threatening to build a new schoolhouse rather than have their children taught by, he stopped abruptly, by a fallen woman. Willow finished for him, her voice steady despite the pain the words caused. You might as well say it. Everyone else does. Owen set down his cup. It's not my place to judge anyone, Miss Nelson. That's refreshingly different from most in this town. Their conversation continued as night fell completely. Owen spoke of places he'd seen across the frontier, and Willow shared stories of her students and her life before coming west. Neither mentioned her pregnancy again, though it hung between them like an unspoken question. When Owen finally rose to leave, he paused at the door. The town meeting tomorrow, will you be there? I'm still employed by the town, at least for now. They haven't found a replacement willing to come to a place this remote. Good. I think it's important you're there. He settled his hat on his head. Thank you for the coffee and conversation, Miss Nelson. Willow, please. Willow, he repeated, and the sound of her name in his deep voice made something flutter inside her. Good night. After he left, Willow stood at the window, watching his tall figure disappear into the darkness. For the first time in months, she felt a small spark of hope. Not because Owen Yates had shown her kindness, she was far too practical to build dreams on such a flimsy foundation, but because he had reminded her that not everyone in the world was as small-minded as the people of Redemption Springs. The next day dawned bright and hot. Willow dressed carefully in her best dress, though it strained across her growing middle. The town meeting would be held in the church, the largest building in Redemption Springs, and she knew all eyes would be on her. Part of her wanted to stay home, to avoid the stares and whispers, but a stronger part refused to hide. The church was already crowded when she arrived. She slipped into a pew at the back, ignoring the people who shifted away from her, as if her condition might be contagious. Mayor Hargrove, the general store owner's husband, stood at the pulpit with Sheriff Colton and Owen beside him. First order of business, the mayor announced, is the appointment of a new deputy. Owen Yates comes with recommendations from lawmen in 3 territories. Sheriff Colton vouches for his character. Owen stood tall and steady as the mayor continued. Several women in the congregation exchanged appreciative glances, and Willow couldn't blame them. Even standing still, he had the powerful grace of a man comfortable in his own skin. After a brief discussion, the council voted unanimously to hire Owen as deputy. He accepted with a modest nod and took his seat again. Next, Mayor Hargrove continued, we must address the situation with our schoolteacher. His gaze fixed on Willow. Miss Nelson's condition has become a matter of concern for many parents. Reverend Palmer has received complaints about the moral example being set for our children. Reverend Palmer stood, his face grave. Several families have requested we terminate Miss Nelson's employment immediately. They feel her presence teaches young girls that immoral behavior has no consequences. Willow's face burned with humiliation, but she sat straighter, refusing to bow her head. Miss Nelson has broken no law, Sheriff Colton pointed out, and finding a replacement teacher before the fall term would be difficult. This isn't about law, Mrs. Hargrove called out from her seat. It's about decency. She claims some man promised to marry her, then disappeared. We've all heard that tale before. I've never lied about my situation, Willow said, her clear voice cutting through the murmurs. She stood, hands protectively cupping her belly. Yes, I believed the promises of a man who proved unworthy of trust. That was my mistake. But I am still the same teacher who has educated your children for 2 years. A respectable woman wouldn't keep a bastard child, someone called out. She'd give it up or go to one of those homes for fallen women back east. This is my child, Willow replied firmly. I will not abandon it because its father did. The debate grew heated, voices rising as people argued about morality and practicality. Willow remained standing, though her legs trembled with the effort of maintaining her composure. Suddenly, Owen rose from his seat and walked deliberately to stand beside her. The room quieted at this unexpected move from the newly appointed deputy. I've sat quiet long enough, he said, his voice carrying easily through the church. I've been in this town one day, and I can already see a grievous injustice being done. Mayor Hargrove frowned. Deputy Yates, this is a town matter a town that treats its most vulnerable this way isn't a town I want to serve, Owen interrupted. Miss Nelson has done nothing to deserve this treatment except face her circumstances with dignity. He turned to face Willow, his blue eyes intense. They've called you a liar about the baby, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. They've judged you without knowing the truth. Well, I believe you. Then, to Willow's astonishment, Owen dropped to one knee before her, taking her hand in his. If the man who fathered your child won't stand by you, then let me be father enough. A collective gasp swept through the church. Willow stared down at Owen, certain she had misheard. Mr. Yates, she whispered, you don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, he replied, his voice low but unwavering. I'm offering you my name, my protection, and my word that I'll care for both you and your child. The church erupted in confusion. Sheriff Colton strode down the aisle, pulling Owen to his feet and a few steps away from Willow. Have you lost your mind? He demanded. You just met the woman yesterday. I know enough, Owen insisted. I know she's being treated unjustly, and I won't stand by and watch it happen. Mayor Hargrove banged his gavel for order. This is highly irregular. Deputy Yates, you cannot simply, I can and I have, Owen cut in. He turned back to Willow. The offer stands, Miss Nelson. No pressure, no demands. Just an honest proposal. Willow's mind raced. Was this some kind of joke? A trick? But the sincerity in Owen's eyes belied that possibility. Still, she couldn't accept such an offer from a virtual stranger, no matter how dire her situation. I appreciate your gallantry, Mr. Yates, she said carefully, but I cannot accept. I don't need rescuing. A hint of admiration flickered in his eyes. I never thought you did. The offer remains open, should you reconsider. The meeting dissolved into chaos after that, with the council hastily tabling the discussion about Willow's employment until the next meeting. As people filed out, their whispers followed Willow like a cloud of insects. But for once, they weren't all condemning. Many seemed bewildered by the new deputy's extraordinary gesture. Willow hurried home, her thoughts in turmoil. She had barely closed her door when another knock came. This time, she knew who it would be. That was quite a performance, Mr. Yates, she said as she opened the door to find Owen standing there, his expression troubled. It wasn't a performance. Then what was it? Madness. Pity. May I come in? He asked instead of answering. Willow hesitated, then stepped aside. Once they were seated, Owen leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. I owe you an explanation, he began. What I did today wasn't planned, but it wasn't impulsive either. I've spent my life watching people suffer because others decided they weren't worthy of basic decency. During the war, after it. Everywhere I've been, it's the same story. The powerful decide who deserves humanity and who doesn't. His eyes met hers, intense and earnest. When I saw how they were treating you, something in me couldn't stay silent. My offer was genuine, Willow. I may not know you well, but I know enough to respect your courage. You would tie yourself to a woman carrying another man's child? Take on that burden. A child is never a burden, Owen said softly. And yes, I would. I've been alone a long time. Maybe too long. This is insanity, Willow whispered, though something inside her responded to his words. The town will think I bewitched you somehow. Let them think what they want. I've never much cared for others' opinions. Clearly, Willow said, a reluctant smile tugging at her lips. But I cannot accept your proposal, Mr. Yates. Marriage should be more than a solution to a problem. Owen, he corrected gently. And you're right. It should be. But sometimes, life doesn't give us perfect choices. He rose to leave. I won't press you. Just know the offer stands, for whatever reasons you might accept or decline it. After he left, Willow paced her small cabin until exhaustion forced her to rest. The baby kicked vigorously, as if sensing her agitation. She placed a hand on her belly, whispering soothing words. What would you do, little one? Take a chance on a stranger with kind eyes, or continue facing this world alone? The following weeks brought changes to Redemption Springs. True to his word, Owen didn't mention his proposal again, but he made a point of greeting Willow publicly whenever their paths crossed. He tipped his hat to her in the street, saved a seat for her at church, and once, memorably, escorted her home when she stayed late at the schoolhouse grading papers. His presence in town had an effect. The rock-throwing stopped. The whispers continued, but they were tempered now with curiosity about the deputy's interest in the disgraced schoolteacher. Some speculated he was truly the father of her child, returned to make amends. Others thought him bewitched or simple-minded to associate with her. Few considered the possibility that he simply saw her worth when others didn't. For Willow, these weeks were a strange mix of hope and caution. She found herself looking forward to Owen's visits, which grew more frequent as July faded into August. He would bring her books from his own collection or wildflowers he'd gathered while riding the boundaries of the town's jurisdiction. They talked for hours about everything and nothing: literature, philosophy, their differing experiences of the world. Yet she kept an emotional distance, afraid to trust again. The memory of Thomas Crawford's promises and subsequent betrayal was still too raw. He had been a traveling salesman who'd swept into town with smooth words and practiced charm. For 6 intoxicating weeks, he had courted her openly, speaking of marriage and a future together in San Francisco. Then, after she had given herself to him completely, he disappeared overnight, leaving her with nothing but memories and the growing evidence of their affair. One evening in late August, Owen arrived at her cabin looking troubled. Willow had just finished supper and was grading arithmetic tests by lamplight. "What's wrong?" she asked as she let him in. "The town council met privately today," he said without preamble. "They voted to terminate your position effective immediately. They've wired for a replacement teacher from Denver." Willow sank into a chair, one hand automatically going to her stomach. I see. She had expected this, but the reality still stung. "When must I vacate the cabin?" "They're giving you until the end of the month." 2 weeks. Owen's jaw was tight with barely contained anger. "It's not right, Willow. I argued with them for hours." "Thank you for trying." She looked around the small space that had been her home. "I'll manage somehow." "How? Where will you go?" "I have some savings. Not much, but enough to get me to Denver, perhaps. I can find work there until the baby comes." "Doing what? Who will hire a woman in your condition?" "I don't know." Willow snapped, then immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry. This isn't your problem to solve." "It could be," Owen said quietly. "My offer still stands." Willow really looked at him. In the weeks she'd known him, Owen had proven himself to be a man of integrity. He was kind, intelligent, and steadfast. The townsfolk respected him, and he had never once made her feel like a charity case. "Why, Owen? Why would you do this for me?" He moved closer, kneeling beside her chair so they were eye to eye. "At first, it was about justice, about doing what's right. But now—" He took her hand gently. "Now it's about you, Willow. I care for you. I didn't expect to, but I do. You barely know me. I know enough." He smiled slightly. "I know you're strong enough to face this town alone, even when they treat you cruelly. I know you love poetry and can recite Tennyson from memory. I know you're a gifted teacher who believes every child deserves knowledge. I know your laugh is rare, but worth waiting for." Tears welled in Willow's eyes. "And the baby? Another man's child? Will be mine in every way that matters," Owen said firmly. "I was orphaned young, Willow. I know what it means to grow up without parents who love you. I would never let that happen to any child I could help." Willow closed her eyes, weighing everything in her mind. Was this madness? Desperation? Or was it perhaps the second chance she never thought she'd have? "If I accept," she said slowly, opening her eyes to meet his gaze, "it would be a real marriage, not just a name on paper?" "As real as you want it to be," Owen replied. "I'm offering everything I have, Willow. My name, my protection, my future. And yes, my heart, if you'll have it." In that moment, looking into his honest blue eyes, Willow made her decision. "Yes," she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you, Owen Yates. His face transformed with a smile that took her breath away. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, he leaned forward and pressed his lips gently to hers. The kiss was tender, unhurried, a promise of care rather than passion. When he pulled back, Willow felt something new unfurling inside her, not the desperate, consuming infatuation she'd felt for Thomas, but something steadier, more real. When? She asked. Tomorrow, if Reverend Palmer will do it. The sooner we're married, the sooner we can fight the council's decision about your job. They can't fire you for being an unwed mother if you're not unwed. They were married the next day in a simple ceremony with Sheriff Colton and his wife as witnesses. Reverend Palmer performed the service with obvious reluctance, but Owen's firm insistence and the legal marriage license from the territorial judge left him little choice. Willow wore her best dress, a soft blue that almost matched Owen's eyes. He had bought her a simple gold band from the jeweler that morning, spending nearly a month's wages on it. When he slid it onto her finger, his hands were steady, but his eyes betrayed his emotion. With this ring, I thee wed, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the empty church. After the ceremony, they walked arm in arm down the main street, ignoring the stares and whispers. Owen had rented rooms above the mercantile until they could find a proper home. It wasn't much, two small rooms with slanting ceilings and creaky floors, but when he carried Willow across the threshold, she felt a surge of gratitude so intense it brought tears to her eyes. "Welcome home, Mrs. Yates," he said, setting her gently on her feet. The newness of it all, the name, the rooms, the man standing before her overwhelmed Willow for a moment. Owen seemed to understand, giving her space as he brought in her trunk and few belongings from the schoolhouse cabin. That evening, they shared their first meal as husband and wife at the small table by the window. Owen had arranged for food from the hotel restaurant, a luxury Willow hadn't experienced in months. As they ate, they talked about practical matters, where they might look for a permanent home, how to approach the town council about reinstating Willow's teaching position, what they would need for the baby. Neither mentioned the most intimate aspect of their new relationship. When the meal was finished and night had fully fallen, Willow felt nervousness creep up her spine. Owen must have sensed it. "I'll take the floor tonight," he said, gesturing to the single bed. "You need your rest." Relief and an unexpected twinge of disappointment mingled in Willow's chest. "Are you sure? It's your right as my husband, too. I didn't marry you for rights, Willow," he interrupted gently. "I married you because I believe in you, and I want to build something true between us. That takes time." His consideration brought fresh tears to her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Later, lying in the darkness with Owen's steady breathing from his makeshift bed on the floor, Willow reflected on the extraordinary turn her life had taken. A month ago, she had been alone, scorned, facing an uncertain future. Now she was married to a good man who asked for nothing but the chance to prove himself worthy of her trust. For the first time in months, she slept without fear of tomorrow. The following week brought both challenges and victories. True to Owen's prediction, the town council was forced to reconsider Willow's dismissal. As the legally wedded wife of a respected town deputy, her situation had changed dramatically. After a contentious meeting, they voted to allow her to finish the term, though several parents still refused to send their children to her class. Owen faced his own battles. Some men in town mocked him behind his back for taking another man's leavings, while others questioned his judgment. Sheriff Colton stood by him, but Owen felt the sting of the town's judgment nonetheless. Despite these challenges, they began building a life together. Owen found a small house for rent on the edge of town, nothing fancy, but solidly built with 2 bedrooms and a good-sized kitchen. Together, they cleaned and furnished it, turning the second bedroom into a nursery for the coming baby. As September brought cooler weather, Willow's pregnancy advanced into its final stages. Her belly was enormous now, the baby active and strong. Owen was endlessly fascinated by the movements, asking permission to feel the kicks and turns with a sense of wonder that touched Willow deeply. Their relationship evolved gradually. The physical distance Owen had maintained out of respect began to close as Willow's trust in him grew. The first time she reached for his hand without prompting, his smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. The first time she initiated a kiss, His surprise and joy were palpable. They still maintained separate sleeping arrangements, though now Owen had a proper cot in their bedroom rather than the floor. Each night, they would talk in the darkness, sharing pieces of themselves that they had never revealed to anyone else. Owen spoke of his childhood in an orphanage after his parents died of cholera, of fighting for the Union despite being barely 17 when the war began, of the nightmares that still sometimes woke him. Willow told him about her strict Boston upbringing, her father's disappointment that she wasn't a son, her mother's quiet encouragement of her education, and her decision to come west after their deaths left her alone with few prospects in the East. She even found the courage to tell him about Thomas, not just the betrayal, but the whirlwind romance that had preceded it, how his charm and worldliness had seemed like an escape from the narrowness of her life. "I was a fool," she concluded, staring at the ceiling in the darkness. "You were human," Owen corrected gently. "Wanting love isn't foolish, Willow. But trusting too easily is. Perhaps. But the alternative, never trusting at all, seems a much sadder fate." As October arrived, Willow's time drew near. Dr. Harris, the town physician, visited regularly to check on her progress. "Everything looks healthy," he assured them. "The baby is in the right position, and you're strong despite your small frame, Mrs. Yates." Still, Owen worried. He had seen women die in childbirth before, and the thought of losing Willow now that she had become the center of his world terrified him. He hired a woman from the neighboring farm to help with household chores and insisted Willow rest as much as possible. "I'm pregnant, not invalid," she protested, though secretly she appreciated his concern. "Humor me," he replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I've never been a father to be before. I'm entitled to fret a little." The way he claimed the role of father so naturally, without hesitation or resentment, made Willow's heart swell with affection. Each day, she found herself falling a little more in love with this steadfast, honorable man who had changed her life so completely. One crisp October night, Willow woke to a sharp pain in her abdomen. She gasped, clutching her belly as another wave followed quickly after. "Owen," she called, her voice strained. "It's time." He was instantly awake, moving with the efficiency of a man who had prepared for this moment. He helped her change into a clean nightgown, then rode to fetch Dr. Harris and Mrs. Peterson, the midwife who had agreed to assist with the birth. The labor was long and difficult. Willow's slender body struggled to accommodate the child that had grown within her. For 18 hours, she battled through contractions that seemed to tear her apart, drawing on reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed. Owen never left her side except when propriety demanded it. He wiped her brow, held her hand through the worst pains, and whispered encouragement when her strength faltered. "You're the strongest person I've ever known," he told her as dawn broke on the second day. "You can do this, Willow. You and our child." "Our child." The words gave her renewed determination. Finally, as afternoon light slanted through the bedroom windows, Willow gave a final, tremendous push, and her baby entered the world with a lusty cry that filled the room. "A boy," Dr. Harris announced, quickly examining the infant. "A fine, healthy boy, Mrs. Peterson cleaned and swaddled the child while Dr. Harris tended to Willow. When the baby was placed in her arms, Willow felt a love so overwhelming it seemed to transcend her physical exhaustion. "Owen," she whispered, "come meet your son." Owen approached the bed, his face a mixture of awe and tenderness as he gazed down at the tiny red-faced bundle. The baby had a shock of dark hair, and, when he briefly opened his eyes, they were a deep blue-gray. "He's perfect," Owen said, his voice thick with emotion. "Just like his mother. Would you like to hold him?" With careful movements, Owen took the baby in his arms, cradling him close to his chest. "Hello, little man," he murmured. "I'm your pa." The simplicity and truth of those words brought tears to Willow's eyes. In that moment, watching Owen with her son, she knew that what had begun as an arrangement of convenience had transformed into something precious and real. "What shall we name him?" Owen asked. Willow hadn't allowed herself to think much about names, afraid to hope too much for a future that had seemed so uncertain. Now, looking at the two most important people in her world, she knew exactly the right name. "William," she said. "William Owen Yates." After both his grandfathers and his father. Owen's eyes shone with unshed tears. "It's perfect," he agreed. News of the birth spread quickly through Redemption Springs. To Willow's surprise, several townswomen brought gifts for the baby: knitted blankets, tiny clothes, jars of preserves for the new mother. Even Mrs. Hargrove appeared at their door with a small package containing a silver rattle. "Every child deserves a welcome," she said stiffly, though her expression softened when she glimpsed the sleeping infant in Willow's arms. The visit that meant the most, however, came from Sheriff Colton and his wife. They brought not only gifts, but also news. The town council met yesterday. The sheriff informed them as they sat in the small parlor. They voted to offer Willow her teaching position permanently, starting after the new year if she wants it. What changed their minds? Owen asked, surprised. Mrs. Colton smiled knowingly. "Martha Jenkins, you know, the banker's wife?" She stood up and said if they could forgive Jed Murphy for nearly drinking himself to death and still let him be the postmaster, they could surely forgive a young woman who made one mistake and has since become a respectable wife and mother. And, the sheriff added with a grin, she reminded them that finding a qualified teacher willing to live in a town this size for the salary they offer is next to impossible. Willow laughed, the sound bright and unrestrained in a way Owen had rarely heard. He glanced at her, his heart full of pride and love for this remarkable woman who had faced the worst of human judgment and emerged stronger. As winter settled over Redemption Springs, the Yates family established new routines. Baby William grew stronger each day, his personality emerging in small ways: his serious expression when studying a new face, his delighted gurgles when Owen sang to him, his perfect contentment in his mother's arms. Willow recovered her strength gradually, helped by Owen's constant support. He took over many household tasks without being asked, learned to change the baby's cloth diapers with surprising skill, and ensured Willow had time to rest each day. At night, they continued their habit of talking in the darkness, but now their conversations included dreams for William's future, plans for their small family, and increasingly, expressions of the deepening feelings between them. One snowy December night, as William slept peacefully in his cradle beside their bed, Willow found the courage to express what had been growing in her heart for months. "Owen," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." He turned toward her in the darkness, his voice warm with affection. "What is it? When you asked me to marry you, you offered me everything: your name, your protection, your heart. I took the first two out of necessity, but I was afraid to accept the third." "I understand why," he said gently. "You had no reason to trust a stranger's heart. But you're not a stranger anymore." Willow sat up, needing to see his face in the dim light from the banked fire. "You're the man who stood by me when no one else would. Who claimed my child as his own without hesitation. Who has shown me every day what true strength and goodness look like." Owen sat up as well, his eyes intent on her face. "Willow, I love you," she said simply. "Not out of gratitude or obligation, but because of who you are. I love you, Owen Yates, with all my heart." For a moment, Owen was perfectly still. Then he reached for her, drawing her gently into his arms. "I've loved you since that first day in the general store," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. "When you stood tall despite their contempt, dignity intact. I just didn't know it yet." Their kiss was different from any they had shared before, deeper, fuller, a promise of the life they would build together. When they finally parted, both breathless, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "Are you sure, Willow? About everything?" he asked, his meaning clear. In answer, she took his hand and led him to her bed, which had remained his only in name until now. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." That night, they truly became husband and wife, discovering each other with tenderness and growing passion. For Willow, it was a revelation so different from her experience with Thomas, which now seemed shallow and mechanical in comparison. Owen's touch was reverent, his focus entirely on her pleasure and comfort, his patience infinite. Afterward, lying in the circle of his arms with William sleeping peacefully beside them, Willow felt a sense of completeness she had never imagined possible. "Thank you," she whispered against Owen's chest. "For what?" "For being father enough. For being husband enough. For being man enough to see me when no one else would." Owen tightened his arms around her. "Thank you for being brave enough to trust again." As Christmas approached, Owen surprised Willow with news that he had purchased a small plot of land just outside town, with plans to build them a proper home in the spring. It's not much, 10 acres with a good well and some timber. But it's ours, he said, spreading the deed on the table before her. Room for William to grow, maybe for brothers and sisters someday if you want that. Willow's eyes widened at the implication. You want more children? With you? As many as you're willing to have, he replied honestly. But only if and when you're ready. The prospect of expanding their family, a family that had begun in such unconventional circumstances, filled Willow with joy. I'd like that, she admitted. Not right away, but someday. William should have siblings. On Christmas Eve, they attended the town celebration at the church. William, now nearly 3 months old and dressed in his finest gown, was the center of attention. Women who had once crossed the street to avoid Willow now cooed over his chubby cheeks and bright eyes. Men who had whispered behind Owen's back now clapped him on the shoulder, complimenting him on his fine son. It's remarkable how quickly they forget their judgment when faced with a wedding ring and a charming baby, Willow observed as they walked home through gently falling snow. People are complex, Owen replied, adjusting the blanket around William, who slept bundled against his chest. The same capacity for cruelty exists alongside the capacity for acceptance and growth. I've seen it everywhere I've been. You're very wise for a man who claims to be just a simple deputy, Willow teased, slipping her arm through his. Not wise, just observant. He smiled down at her, snowflakes catching in her auburn hair. And extraordinarily fortunate in my wife. At home, they exchanged simple gifts by the fire, a new journal and pen for Willow, a finely crafted leather holster for Owen, and a small wooden horse Owen had carved for William, though the baby was far too young to appreciate it. I have one more gift, Owen said, reaching into his pocket. This arrived yesterday. He handed Willow an official-looking document. She unfolded it, reading quickly, then looked up with tears in her eyes. Adoption papers? I want to make it legal in every way, Owen explained. William is my son in my heart already. This just makes it official before the law. Willow's hands trembled as she traced William's name on the document. William Owen Yates, son of Owen Yates and Willow Yates. This is the most precious gift I could ever receive, she whispered. There's one more thing, Owen said, his expression growing serious. Something I've been wanting to do properly. He knelt before her, taking her hands in his. Willow Nelson Yates, I married you first out of principle, then out of growing affection. Now I love you more deeply than I ever thought possible. Will you continue this journey with me, not out of necessity, but out of choice? Will you be my wife in every sense, for all the days we're granted? Tears spilled down Willow's cheeks as she nodded. Yes, Owen. 1,000 times yes. He slipped a ring from his pocket, a delicate gold band set with a small pearl, far more elegant than the simple wedding band he'd purchased in haste months before. I've been saving for this since our wedding day, he admitted as he placed it on her finger above her wedding band. I wanted you to have something beautiful, something worthy of the woman you are. It's perfect, Willow said, admiring how the pearl caught the firelight. But Owen, you didn't need to, I wanted to, he interrupted gently. Just as I wanted you, just as I want our life together. No obligation, no duty, just love. As midnight approached, with William sleeping peacefully in his cradle and snow falling softly outside, Owen and Willow stood by the window, his arms wrapped around her from behind, her head resting against his chest. Look at the stars, he murmured, pointing to where the clouds had briefly parted, revealing a brilliant splash of stars above the snow-covered landscape. When I was a boy in the orphanage, I used to watch them and make up stories about the people who lived among them. I imagined they were looking down at me, that I wasn't really alone. Willow covered his hands with hers where they rested on her waist. You're not alone anymore. Neither of us is. No, Owen agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. We have each other. We have William. We have a future brighter than any star. As the clock struck midnight, ushering in Christmas Day, they sealed that promise with a kiss that spoke of all they had overcome and all they had yet to experience together. From humble beginnings, a desperate proposal, a marriage of convenience, a child born of another man's betrayal had grown a love stronger and more enduring than either of them had dared to hope for. And in his cradle, William Owen Yates slept soundly, secure in the knowledge, even if only in that instinctive way babies know things, that he was loved completely by both the mother who had carried him and the father who had chosen him.